Welcome back to the channel, Book Dragons. I am really glad you're here with me today. As you can see, everything is kind of in shambles. You probably noticed I have no books behind me, and that's because I am moving very soon. So all of my books are packed up. If you have not gotten a chance to watch my Pack With Me live stream that I did, you can go and watch the replay of that. I'll link that in the cards at the end of the video if you want to check that out. That was a lot of fun, had some great conversations with everybody, so thanks to all of you who tuned into that, and for all of you who decide to watch it afterwards. You might enjoy that. It's kind of a little impromptu bookshelf tour in a way, but like an unbookshelf tour because I'm taking everything off. Anyway, so that's not why I made this video today. I made this video because I want to review a book. I recently finished reading Nettle and Bone by Kingfisher. I wanted to make a video to talk to you about the book. This is my first Kingfisher read. That's right, I've never read Kingfisher before. I've heard really good things. I do have a couple other books of theirs on my TBR that I've heard really good things about, which you may have heard of. What Moves the Dead and What Feasts at Night, those are definitely on my radar. And there's a few others that I might check out as well in the future. Let's talk about Nettle and Bone though, okay? I won't go into too much detail because it's a very simple plot. Nettle and Bone is a dark fairy tale. And Kingfisher is known for books that kind of border on horror. They just walk that line of not quite super horrific, but not really your cozy fantasy read either. Now, I say that not having read What Moves the Dead or What Feasts at Night. Those may be more horror than I'm thinking they are, so I don't know. But this was not. So if you are looking for a dark fairy tale and you're not really into horror at all, this is probably a good book for you. And so yes, it is a dark fairy tale. It takes place in a faraway kingdom. The main character of the story is Mara. She's roughly about 30 years old when the story takes place, and she is the youngest of 3 daughters to a noble house that rules a lesser kingdom, and that kingdom is subject to the main kingdom in this story, which is really just known as the Northern Kingdom in the tale. And Mara has set out on a quest of sorts to do what she needs to do to rescue her sister from an abusive marriage to the king. And that really is all there is to this story in terms of plot. But that doesn't mean it's a boring story. It is definitely not a boring story. Along the way, Mara encounters different people that she needs to join her in this endeavor to rescue her sister. One of those is a dust wife, and the dust wife is more or less a witch that serves a particular community. So she does little odd spells and tinctures and herbal remedies for the people in the countryside that she lives in. And then at some point in the story, she gets to go to a goblin market and she meets a guy named Fenris, and he joins the crew as well. And then there are several godmothers in this story. Fairy godmothers, yes, that's right. And one of those fairy godmothers is kind of lackluster in her abilities, but she has just enough ability to help Mara in her quest as well. And so this ragtag band of 4 unlikely companions ventures off to the kingdom to rescue her sister. That's really all the story boils down to, but there is so much more to the story than that, and I'm not going to really spoil anything else for you. You just have to experience the story. The characters really are interesting and fun and entertaining at times. There's a lot of good dry humor and punny humor. So if you like puns, you're going to find some of that in here as well. And there's some really cool magic that happens in the story, some of which involves necromancy. And I'm not a big fan of necromancy, but the way it was done in this book was kind of interesting, I thought. So I enjoyed that part of it just fine. At certain points they get to communicate with the dead and things like that. So there's definitely some fun and interesting stuff happening in this book. And there is a little bit of romance as well in the stories. So if you like a good, simple, romantic element to your fairy tales, you're going to find that in here as well. But there's also a lot of elements of typical fairy tales that this book turns on its head. And so I really enjoyed seeing how that was done as well. So we kind of already talked about what I liked about the book. But just to kind of highlight some of that again, I did enjoy the characters. I enjoyed the magic that was in this book. I enjoyed some of the unique twists on the typical fairy tale. I also really like that it's a very linear story. You're not bouncing back and forth in different timelines and focusing on several different points of view. It's really very linear, straightforward. Mara's the main character and you follow her most of the time, and then she interacts with the other characters in the story, but the story is really about her. So I liked that. It was very straightforward and that made it easy to read as well. I also really like that it's a short book. It's only about 250 pages, so that made for a really quick read. And that was something that I needed this month. I needed a good, quick read. and I found it with this. As far as things that I didn't really like about the story, I wasn't really wowed by anything that happened. There weren't any trumpets and fireworks. It was just a very basic story, most of which has been done before. The characters weren't really that new or refreshing. They were just kind of your standard cookie cutter characters with some additional flares added in, and that was fine, but it didn't really blow me away. I didn't really feel overly connected to any of the characters, and I think that's kind of what drops this book a little bit for me. The magic was cool, I was fine with that, but the magic was also fairly average and what you would expect from most standard fantasy novels or fairy tales. So as far as my rank goes for the book, I would put this in my shiny tier. I don't know if I would read it again. I might, but it's not high on my list in terms of books I would reread, and chances are I may not reread it again, but I would highly recommend it. I am really glad I read it. So if you're out there and you've been wondering about this book, I do highly recommend that you pick it up and see if you like it. Maybe you'll like it better than I did. Maybe you won't like it as well as I did. And as I said, it's middle of the road for me. It's in my shiny tier. It's a decent, fun little story. I do sometimes like to think about books that would make good movies or TV show adaptations. And this book, I think, would work really well, probably a movie, because it's such a short book. It would probably be best done as a movie. I could see Disney maybe venturing into this book for a dark fairy tale, because they're starting to get into some darker stuff on occasion. So I could see Disney doing justice to this for a movie, whether it's an animated movie or a live action movie, I don't know, or any one of the other studios, Netflix maybe, or HBO, I don't know. But there's some good options out there if there was a studio that wanted to do a movie from this. I think it would work really well as a movie, especially because of the linear plot line. It's just so straightforward that you just go beat by beat by beat by beat, and you've got a great movie. And there's enough action in the book that I think it would work well for that. But even if there's not an adaptation made, the story is fun. It's definitely worth your time to read, and I hope you'll check it out. So let me know in the comments below if you read this book, what you thought of it, and if you've not read this book, do you think you're going to read it now based on my review, or did my review make it so that you don't really want to read the book? Let me know. I would love to dialogue with you in the comments below. And guys, until next time, make sure you're reading more books. I will talk to you soon. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to my patrons. I really appreciate all you do to support the channel. Thank you so much.